Hey guys, this is Mr. C, and in this video we're going to be talking about how to calculate slope of a line. And so the first slide I have here is basically the slope formula, and you have 2 points, x sub 1, y sub 1, and x sub 2, y sub 2. The subscripts just tell you which point the x and y values are coming from, so when you plug them into the formula, you won't plug them in incorrectly. So you do need to have 2 points in order to calculate the slope of the line. So the slope formula is the slope m is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So naturally, the most common mistake is people will put this up here and this down here, and they wind up flipping it. Don't want to do that. So we'll talk about that as we go. So basically what it is you take these 4 numbers and you plug them into these 4 positions, and then you simplify. And slope is basically nothing more than a number that tells you how steep a line is. If the slope is positive, it'll be going up from left to right. If the slope is negative, it'll be going down from left to right without even looking at the graph. If the slope is 0, then it will be a straight horizontal line across. And if the slope is undefined, if this turns out to be 0, then it's going to be a vertical line. So we're going to look at some sample problems here that I've selected. And so the first one we're going to take a look at is this one. And so it says, find the slope of a line that passes through the points 3, 7, and 5, negative 4. And so our job is to basically plug those values in. So what I'll do in this first one is I'll actually write the formula out. Y sub 2 minus y sub 1, and then over. And I'm really bad about making straight lines here, so I've got to do this. X sub 2 minus x sub 1. So which ones do you call x1, y1, x2, y2? It doesn't really matter. If both points are on the same line, they're going to have the same slope no matter which one you pick first. However, most people are going to basically do this. They're going to consider this to be x1, y1, x2, and y2. But if you want to choose these to be x1, y1, and that to be x2, y2, that's perfectly fine. You'll get the same slope no matter what. And so what we're going to do is we're going to show those 4 numbers actually being plugged into the formula here. And the formula really, to derive that, is nothing more than rise over run. It's the difference of the y values, which gives you the rise, or the fall if it's negative. And this is basically the run from left to right, how far over it went. So y2 is negative 4. And all first timers, I'd suggest doing this. y1 is 7. In class, this is what I would do too. x2 is 5. And x1 is 3. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to plug those 4 numbers in and simplify. So we'll have negative 4 minus 7 over 5 minus 3. Now, the biggest obstacle at this point is students not knowing how to work with negative or signed numbers. So if that happens, that's a skill that you have to have very strong if you want to get these slope problems correct. So let's go ahead and simplify that. Negative 4, take away 7. 7 and 4 is 11. Both numbers are negative, so you retain the negative. 5 take away 3 is 2. And since 11 and 2 have no factors in common, you can't simplify that, you just have to leave it. Don't go turning this into a decimal in your calculator. It's not going to do you any more good to do that. Leaving it as a fraction is the best way to go. And that's it. So now, let's look at our next one here. This time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to label my points, x1, y1, and x2, y2. And then I'm going to plug them into my formula as I go this time, because now that I know how it works, it's going to be very simple. 2 minus 2 over 8 minus negative 8. And I do use parentheses there because I'm subtracting a negative. Common source of error there. All right, so here's where I'm at. I have 2 minus 2, which is 0. 8 take away negative 8 would really, these 2 negatives we know becomes a plus. And so that's really going to be 16 down here. But if you look at it, 0 divided by 16 is 0. So my slope is 0, which means my line is going to be horizontal like that. Now, how did I know that from the start? Well, if my two coordinates, my 2 points have the same y coordinate, then they're going to have to, both of them go through that same y value. And so therefore, that's going to force this line to be a horizontal line if the slope is 0. All right, let's try this one. Okay, so let's do x1, y1, x2, y2. Not a bad habit. So m is equal to -4 minus 12 over 5 minus -1. And again, I use parentheses because I don't want to lose one of those minus signs there. So here I have -4 take away 12 would be a -16. 5 minus -1 is really 5 plus 1, which is 6. Now that fraction I can reduce. I can divide those both by 2, and I can make that -8 over 3. And everybody's going to want you to do that, by the way. So don't ever leave a fraction unsimplified unless there's a really good reason for it. And that's it, -8/3. So that line, -8/3, is going to be going down from left to right because it's a negative slope. All right, let's check out this one. We've got x1, y1, x2, and y2. All right, so m is equal to 2 minus 8 over -3 minus -4. I never seem to draw that line enough. All right, so let's take a look at this. 2 take away 8 would be -6. -3 minus -4. Let's deal with these two negatives first. -3, that would be +4, right? Because two negatives make a positive. Okay, so that's going to be -6 over. -3 plus 4 is going to be 1, +1. And -6 divided by 1, we can just go ahead and write that as -6 and be done with it. And so that is it for that one. Okay, let's try this one. So here we have x1, y1, x2, y2. So let's take a look at this first. Our two x values are different, but our two y values are the same. 15, -5 and -20, -5 are going to both have the same y coordinate. So let me do this real quick. I'm just going to draw a little sketch here of a graph just to kind of see what's going on. So let's say we go 5, 10, 15, 20, 5, 10, 15, 20, and we'll go up here. So each of these represents 5. 15, 1, 2, 3, -5 would be right there. -20, 5, 10, 15, 20, -5 is right there. And if we notice, both of those points have the same y coordinate, so they're going to be on the same horizontal line. And so that's what the line is going to look like. Do I even need to calculate the slope? No. So if I know that my two y coordinates are the same, I can immediately write 0 for my slope. And I'll put a little m equals there. You don't even have to calculate it unless you want to, or unless your teacher tells you that you have to do it. A little bit of knowledge goes a long way. And so I would just go ahead and write 0 down for my answer for that one. All right, let's take a look at this one. Okay, so here we have a bunch of negatives. That's what teachers are going to give you. Bunches of negatives, because we all know what happens when we have negatives. That's the most common source of error by far. So we're going to take this one kind of slow. All right, we got -12, take away -2 over -5, take away -3. Okay, so I put all the four numbers in correctly. If this was a problem in class, I'd probably get at least 10 different answers for this. It's just that it's that much of a source of error. So that's why we take it slow. Okay, these two negatives are going to make a positive. So -12 plus 2 over, these two negatives make a positive, -5 plus 3. All right, that one little step does tremendous wonders for your grades when you just take it one little step at a time. -12 plus 2 is going to bring that down to a -10. Negative 5 plus 3 is a negative 2. So you have negative over negative. You don't want to leave those there. Negative over negative is positive. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So this is actually going to be positive 5. The reason why is because negative 2 goes into negative 10, positive 5 times. And so your slope for that one would be 5. All right, let's try this one. So I'm looking at this, and the first thing that catches my eye are these two numbers that are the same, in the same positions. So let's see how that's going to work out. X1, Y1, and X2, Y2. So my slope is going to be negative 6, take away 0. And people are thinking, oh, 0, that's a freebie. Yeah, just for a little while. Negative 2 minus another negative 2. Okay, so let's take this one step by step. Negative 6 take away 0 is still negative 6, right? But negative 2 minus negative 2 is really negative 2 plus 2. So what happens is your numerator stays negative 6, but your denominator is going to be 0 right here. I can't tell you how many times I've seen students write 0 down for their answer. That can't be. The reason why is because when you divide by 0, it's basically garbage. It gives you no information. And so what happens is you get undefined. Or you can write no slope. Either of those two answers are correct. So on a graph, let's see what's happening here for this one. Just for you visual learners out there, which I am a visual learner, I got to see pictures. Okay, so we got to go up to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we'll go up 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Negative 2, 0 is right there. Negative 2, oops, didn't go down far enough. Negative 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is way down here. But if you look at it, that's going to make a vertical line. And that vertical line has no slope. That's the worst thing you can have, because if you think about a person walking up the line or walking down the line, maybe your teacher's talked about that, you can't walk straight up the line. That's the worst case scenario. So that line right there has no slope. It's still a line. It's a valid line, but it's just undefined slope, or you could say no slope. All right, so how do these get more complicated? So here's one that I picked out that I like. This one has a bunch of A's in there, and so students will look at this problem and they'll skip it a lot of times. When in fact, you have the formula ready to use. I mean, you have to have an answer for it. So let's see, I've got X1, Y1, and X2, Y2. So the first thing I'm going to hear is, I don't get it, I don't understand. And they haven't written the formula down or plugged anything in or anything. So let's plug stuff in and see what happens. 6A, whatever that is, I don't know what A is, minus 2A over negative A minus A. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. 6A take away 2A is 4A over negative A take away another A is negative 2A, right? Okay, so what happens is the A's cancel out. The reason why I can cancel the A's out is because, fortunately, in the problem, I have stated that A is not equal to 0, which means I'm not going to have any issues down here. If the A's cancel out, I get 4 over negative 2. And as we all know, 4 divided by negative 2 is just simply negative 2. And so that would be like a challenge problem or something for enrichment that you get a lot. Or on an EOC, they don't mind putting that stuff on there at all. But that's how you handle it. Just stick with the plan. Use your slope formula, label your points, plug everything in, see what happens. And in this case, it turned out to be a nice number at the end, negative 2, so no big deal. All right, guys, so this was all about just calculating the slope of a line, a little bit of background information. Remember to like and share, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and spread the word, and we will see you guys later. Bye-bye.